Simply Audio runs. Bible story of Moses. The superhero in him rose up to help his people. Part 1. Baby Moses Bible story. Exodus 2. Moses was called the Prince of Egypt, but when baby Moses was born, his life was in danger. The ruler of Egypt, Pharaoh, had ordered that all Hebrew baby boys be killed, because the population was increasing too much. In spite of the Pharaoh's ruling, God made sure Moses not only survived, but also grew up in Pharaoh's palace, with him providing for Moses. Before this, Moses was hidden for 3 months, to avoid being slain by the Egyptians. When the baby could not be hidden any longer, his mother put him in a basket made of bulrushes and placed it among the reeds by the river bank. As God would have it, Pharaoh's daughter came to the river to bathe, and there was the baby. She knew it was because of her dad's commands why the baby was placed there. She felt sorry for the baby and decided to take him as her own. She named him Moses because she drew him out of the water. The plan of God for his people could not be stopped, and Moses was the one God had chosen to deliver the Israelites from Egypt, after 400 years of slavery. Superhero moment. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived, and bare a son, and when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. And when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off, to wit what would be done to him. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side, and when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. Superhero moment. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and, behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, "This is one of the Hebrews' children." Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee?" And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Go." And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, "Take this child away, and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages." Double superhero. And the woman took the child, and nursed it. And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses, and she said, "Because I drew him out of the water." And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting an Hebrew, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian, and hid him in the sand. Superhero moment. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together, and he said to him that did the wrong, "Wherefore smitest thou thy fellow?" And he said, "Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me, as thou killedst the Egyptian?" And Moses feared, and said, "Surely this thing is known." Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh, and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water, and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them, and watered their flock. Superhero moment. And when they came to Reuel their father, he said, "How is it that ye are come so soon today?" And they said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock." And he said unto his daughters, "And where is he? Why is it that ye have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread." And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah his daughter. And she bare him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a stranger in a strange land." And it came to pass in process of time, that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. Exodus 2:1-5. Moses and the burning bushes. Moses and the burning bush. Exodus 2:11-4:17. Introduction to Moses the burning bush. Moses grew up and was educated in the palace of Pharaoh's palace. He knew that he was an Israelite, because unknown to Pharaoh's daughter, she was hiring his mother to look after him. Knowing that he was an Israelite, Moses was not pleased when he saw an Egyptian taskmaster beating one of his own people who were the Egyptian slaves, so he killed the taskmaster. Later, out of fear for his own life, he fled to Midian when realized that what he had done was known. Superhero moment. Moses stayed in the land of Midian for 40 years. During this period, he married and became a shepherd tending to his father-in-law's sheep. While he was out with the flock in the wilderness, Moses beheld a most spectacular and supernatural occurrence, a bush burning without being consumed. It caught his attention and moved closer to observe it. Superhero moment. The Lord spoke to him from out of the burning bush and told Moses that he had chosen him to deliver his people out of the land of Egypt. Moses did not readily agree, gave many excuses why he was not the right person for the job. After much debating on the side of Moses, the Lord gave him his brother, Aaron, to help him. Superhero moment. Moses stayed in the land of Midian for 40 years. During this period, he married and became a shepherd tending to his father-in-law's sheep. While he was out with the flock in the wilderness, Moses beheld a most spectacular and supernatural occurrence, a bush burning without being consumed. It caught his attention and moved closer to observe it. Superhero moment. The Lord spoke to him from out of the burning bush and told Moses that he had chosen him to deliver his people out of the land of Egypt. Moses did not readily agree, gave many excuses why he was not the right person for the job. After much debating on the side of Moses, the Lord gave him his brother, Aaron, to help him. When Yahweh saw that he came over to see, God called to him out of the middle of the bush and said, "Moses! Moses!" He said, "Here I am." He said, "Don't come close. Take off your sandals, for the place you are standing on is holy ground." Moreover, he said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Superhero moment. Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Yahweh said, "I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Now, behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me. Moreover, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come now therefore, and I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt." Moses said to God, "Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" Superhero moment. He said, "Certainly I will be with you. This will be the token to you, that I have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain." Moses said to God, "Behold, when I come to the children of Israel, and tell them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name, what should I tell them?" Double superhero. God said to Moses, "I am who I am," and he said, "You shall tell the children of Israel this, I am has sent me to you." God said moreover to Moses, "You shall tell the children of Israel this, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this is my memorial to all generations. Go and gather the elders of Israel together, and tell them, Yahweh, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have surely visited you, and seen that which is done to you in Egypt. Superhero moment. I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, to a land flowing with milk and honey. They will listen to your voice. You shall come, you and the elders of Israel, to the king of Egypt, and you shall tell him, Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. Now please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh, our God. Superhero moment. I know that the king of Egypt won't give you permission to go, no, not by a mighty hand. I will reach out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders which I will do among them, and after that he will let you go. I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it will happen that when you go, you shall not go empty-handed. But every woman shall ask of her neighbor, and of her who visits her house, jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and clothing. You shall put them on your sons, and on your daughters. You shall plunder the Egyptians. Exodus 3:1-2. Moses answered, But, behold, they will not believe me, nor listen to my voice, for they will say, Yahweh has not appeared to you. Yahweh said to him, What is that in your hand? He said, A rod. He said, Throw it on the ground. Superhero moment. He threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and Moses ran away from it. Yahweh said to Moses, Stretch out your hand, and take it by the tail. He stretched out his hand, and took hold of it, and it became a rod in his hand. This is so that they may believe that Yahweh, the God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to you. Yahweh said furthermore to him, Now put your hand inside your cloak. He put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous, as white as snow. He said, Put your hand inside your cloak again. He put his hand inside his cloak again, and when he took it out of his cloak, behold, it had turned again as his other flesh. Superhero moment. It will happen, if they will not believe you or listen to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. It will happen, if they will not believe even these 2 signs or listen to your voice, that you shall take of the water of the river, and pour it on the dry land. The water which you take out of the river will become blood on the dry land. Moses said to Yahweh, O Lord, I am not eloquent, neither before now, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech, and of a slow tongue. Yahweh said to him, Who made man's mouth? Or who makes one mute, or deaf, or seeing, or blind? Double superhero moment. Isn't it I, Yahweh? Now therefore go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall speak. Moses said, Oh, Lord, please send someone else. Yahweh's anger burned against Moses, and he said, What about Aaron, your brother, the Levite? I know that he can speak well. Also, behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. You shall speak to him, and put the words in his mouth. I will be with your mouth, and with his mouth, and will teach you what you shall do. He will be your spokesman to the people. It will happen that he will be to you a mouth, and you will be to him as God. You shall take this rod in your hand, with which you shall do the signs. Superhero moments indeed. Exodus 4:1-7.
Simply audio runs. Samuel. Superhero. 1 Samuel 1 verse 1 to 28 and 2 verse 1 to 11, chapter 3 verse 1 and chapter 4 to 22. Hannah was married to Elkanah. She was unable to bear children for many years. Samuel was the answer to Hannah's prayer when she cried unto the Lord, asking for a man-child that she would give back to the service of Lord. Samuel was born and Hannah kept her promise. After weaning him, she took him to the house of the Lord, where child Samuel grew up with the high priest Eli. One night, when Samuel was still young, the Lord called him by name, but he didn't recognize the voice of the Lord, so he went to Eli thinking he was calling him. After the third time, Eli realized it must be the Lord calling Samuel, so instructed him to respond by saying, "Speak, Lord, your servant hears you." The Lord then spoke to Samuel about Eli and his sons who were not following the ways of the Lord. Samuel became the next leader of Israel, after the death of Eli and his sons. Now there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim, of the hill country of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeraham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zoph, an Ephraimite. He had 2 wives. The name of one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. This man went up out of his city from year to year to worship and to sacrifice to Yahweh of armies in Shiloh. The 2 sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, priests to Yahweh, were there. When the day came that Elkanah sacrificed, he gave portions to Peninnah his wife and to all her sons and her daughters, but he gave a double portion to Hannah, for he loved Hannah, but Yahweh had shut up her womb. Her rival provoked her severely, to irritate her, because Yahweh had shut up her womb. So year by year, when she went up to Yahweh's house, her rival provoked her. Therefore she wept and didn't eat. Elkanah her husband said to her, "Hannah, why do you weep? Why don't you eat? Why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons?" So Hannah rose up after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest was sitting on his seat by the doorpost of Yahweh's temple. She was in bitterness of soul, and prayed to Yahweh, weeping bitterly. She vowed a vow, and said, "Yahweh of armies, if you will indeed look at the affliction of your servant and remember me, and not forget your servant, but will give to your servant a boy, then I will give him to Yahweh all the days of his life, and no razor shall come on his head." As she continued praying before Yahweh, Eli saw her mouth. Now Hannah spoke in her heart. Only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she was drunk. Eli said to her, "How long will you be drunk? Get rid of your wine." Hannah answered, "No, my lord, I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. I have not been drinking wine or strong drink, but I poured out my soul before Yahweh. Don't consider your servant a wicked woman, for I have been speaking out of the abundance of my complaint and my provocation." Then Eli answered, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked of him." She said, "Let your servant find favor in your sight." So the woman went her way and ate, and her facial expression wasn't sad anymore. They rose up in the morning early and worshipped Yahweh, then returned and came to their house to Ramah. Then Elkanah knew Hannah his wife, and Yahweh remembered her. When the time had come, Hannah conceived, and bore a son, and she named him Samuel, saying, "Because I have asked him of Yahweh." The man Elkanah, and all his house, went up to offer to Yahweh the yearly sacrifice and his vow. But Hannah didn't go up, for she said to her husband, "Not until the child is weaned, then I will bring him, that he may appear before Yahweh, and stay there forever." Elkanah her husband said to her, "Do what seems good to you. Wait until you have weaned him, only may Yahweh establish his word." So the woman waited and nursed her son until she weaned him. When she had weaned him, she took him up with her, with 3 bulls, and 1 ephah of meal, and a container of wine, and brought him to Yahweh's house in Shiloh. The child was young. They killed the bull, and brought the child to Eli. She said, "Oh, my lord, as your soul lives, my lord, I am the woman who stood by you here, praying to Yahweh. I prayed for this child, and Yahweh has given me my petition which I asked of him. Therefore I have also given him to Yahweh. As long as he lives he is given to Yahweh." He worshipped Yahweh there. 1 Samuel 1:1-8. Hannah prayed, and said, "My heart exults in Yahweh. My horn is exalted in Yahweh. My mouth is enlarged over my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation. There is no one as holy as Yahweh, for there is no one besides you, nor is there any rock like our God. Don't keep talking so exceedingly proudly. Don't let arrogance come out of your mouth, for Yahweh is a God of knowledge. By him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty men are broken. Those who stumbled are armed with strength. Those who were full have hired themselves out for bread. Those who were hungry are satisfied. Yes, the barren has borne 7. She who has many children languishes. Yahweh kills and makes alive. He brings down to Sheol and brings up. Yahweh makes poor and makes rich. He brings low, he also lifts up. He raises up the poor out of the dust. He lifts up the needy from the dunghill to make them sit with princes and inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are Yahweh's. He has set the world on them. He will keep the feet of his holy ones, but the wicked will be put to silence in darkness, for no man will prevail by strength. Those who strive with Yahweh shall be broken to pieces. He will thunder against them in the sky. Yahweh will judge the ends of the earth. He will give strength to his king, and exalt the horn of his anointed. Elkanah went to Ramah to his house. The child served Yahweh before Eli the priest. 1 Samuel 2:1-1. The child Samuel ministered to Yahweh before Eli. Yahweh's word was rare in those days. There were not many visions then. At that time, when Eli was laid down in his place, now his eyes had begun to grow dim, so that he could not see, and God's lamp hadn't yet gone out, and Samuel had laid down in Yahweh's temple where God's ark was. Yahweh called Samuel. He said, "Here I am." He ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." He said, "I didn't call. Lie down again." He went and lay down. Yahweh called yet again, "Samuel." Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." He answered, "I didn't call, my son. Lie down again." Now Samuel didn't yet know Yahweh, neither was Yahweh's word yet revealed to him. Yahweh called Samuel again the 3rd time. He arose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." Eli perceived that Yahweh had called the child. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, "Go, lie down. It shall be, if he calls you, that you shall say, 'Speak, Yahweh, for your servant hears.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Yahweh came and stood and called as at other times, "Samuel, Samuel." Then Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant hears." Yahweh said to Samuel, "Behold, I will do a thing in Israel at which both the ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. In that day I will perform against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house, from the beginning even to the end. For I have told him that I will judge his house forever for the iniquity which he knew, because his sons brought a curse on themselves, and he didn't restrain them. Therefore I have sworn to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be removed with sacrifice or offering forever." Samuel lay until the morning, and opened the doors of Yahweh's house. Samuel was afraid to show Eli the vision. Then Eli called Samuel and said, "Samuel, my son." He said, "Here I am." He said, "What is the thing that he has spoken to you? Please don't hide it from me." "God do so to you, and more also, if you hide anything from me of all the things that he spoke to you." Samuel told him every bit, and hid nothing from him. He said, "It is Yahweh. Let him do what seems good to him." Samuel grew, and Yahweh was with him and let none of his words fall to the ground. All Israel from Dan even to Beersheba knew that Samuel was established to be a prophet of Yahweh. Yahweh appeared again in Shiloh, for Yahweh revealed himself to Samuel in Shiloh by Yahweh's word. 1 Samuel 3, 1-1. The word of Samuel came to all Israel. Now Israel went out against the Philistines to battle, and encamped beside Ebenezer, and the Philistines encamped in Aphek. The Philistines put themselves in array against Israel. When they joined battle, Israel was defeated by the Philistines, who killed about 4,000 men of the army in the field. When the people had come into the camp, the elders of Israel said, "Why has Yahweh defeated us today before the Philistines? Let's get the ark of Yahweh's covenant out of Shiloh and bring it to us, that it may come among us and save us out of the hand of our enemies." So the people sent to Shiloh, and they brought from there the ark of the covenant of Yahweh of armies, who sits above the cherubim, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were there with the ark of the covenant of God. When the ark of Yahweh's covenant came into the camp, all Israel shouted with a great shout, so that the earth resounded. When the Philistines heard the noise of the shout, they said, "What does the noise of this great shout in the camp of the Hebrews mean?" They understood that Yahweh's ark had come into the camp. The Philistines were afraid, for they said, "God has come into the camp." They said, "Woe to us! For there has not been such a thing before. Woe to us! Who shall deliver us out of the hand of these mighty gods? These are the gods that struck the Egyptians with all kinds of plagues in the wilderness. Be strong and behave like men, O you Philistines, that you not be servants to the Hebrews, as they have been to you. Strengthen yourselves like men, and fight." The Philistines fought, and Israel was defeated, and each man fled to his tent. There was a very great slaughter, for 30,000 footmen of Israel fell. God's ark was taken, and the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were slain. A man of Benjamin ran out of the army and came to Shiloh the same day, with his clothes torn and with dirt on his head. When he came, behold, Eli was sitting on his seat by the road watching, for his heart trembled for God's ark. When the man came into the city and told about it, all the city cried out. When Eli heard the noise of the crying, he said, "What does the noise of this tumult mean?" The man hurried, and came and told Eli. Now Eli was 98 years old. His eyes were set, so that he could not see. The man said to Eli, "I am he who came out of the army, and I fled today out of the army." He said, "How did the matter go, my son?" He who brought the news answered, "Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has been also a great slaughter among the people. Your two sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and God's ark has been captured." When he made mention of God's ark, Eli fell from off his seat backward by the side of the gate, and his neck broke, and he died, for he was an old man and heavy. He had judged Israel 40 years. His daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child, near to giving birth. When she heard the news that God's ark was taken and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and gave birth, for her pains came on her. About the time of her death the women who stood by her said to her, "Don't be afraid, for you have given birth to a son." But she didn't answer, neither did she regard it. She named the child Ichabod, saying, "The glory has departed from Israel, because God's ark was taken, and because of her father-in-law and her husband." She said, "The glory has departed from Israel, for God's ark has been taken." 1 Samuel 4:1.
Simply audio runs. Bible stories. You can listen to and learn from. David and Goliath. 1 Samuel 17. Introduction to David and Goliath. One of the most well-loved stories in the Bible comes alive with this incredulous true life story of faith, bravery, a love for God and country. David was a young boy whose responsibility was to tend to his father's sheep. He had a love for music, so when the king Saul needed a skilled musician, David helped him. Superhero moment. David's brothers were a part of the army. He was not even considered a qualified recruit to join them in fighting for his nation. However, this changed when a 9-foot giant, named Goliath, defies Israel and blasphemes God. The entire army cowered in fear, but no so for young David. The opposite happened to David. His anger was stirred that an uncircumcised Philistine would defy the army of living God. He jumps into action, causing him to be recognized and recorded as one of the greatest heroes in the Bible. Superhero moment. As you listen to this story of a daring shepherd boy and the battle that unfolded, we see God at work through a humble boy who put his trust in God. Bible story of David and Goliath. 1 Samuel 17. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and they were gathered together at Soko, which belongs to Judah, and encamped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and encamped in the valley of Elah, and set the battle in array against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on the mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on the mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. A champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span, went out. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he wore a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. He had bronze shin armor on his legs and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. The staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. His shield-bearer went before him. He stood and cried to the armies of Israel, and said to them, "Why have you come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and you servants to Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then will we be your servants, but if I prevail against him and kill him, then you will be our servants and serve us." The Philistine said, "I defy the armies of Israel today. Give me a man, that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. The man was an elderly old man in the days of Saul. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had gone after Saul to the battle, and the names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab the firstborn, and next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. Now David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. The Philistine came near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. Jesse said to David his son, "Now take for your brothers an ephah of this parched grain and these 10 loaves, and carry them quickly to the camp to your brothers, and bring these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers are doing, and bring back news." Now Saul, and they, and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took the provisions and went, as Jesse had commanded him. He came to the place of the wagons as the army which was going out to the fight shouted for the battle. Israel and the Philistines put the battle in array, army against army. David left his baggage in the hand of the keeper of the baggage and ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. As he talked with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of the Philistines, and said the same words, and David heard them. The men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who has come up? He has surely come up to defy Israel. The king will give great riches to the man who kills him, and will give him his daughter, and will make his father's house tax-free in Israel. Superhero moment. David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, "What shall be done to the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The people answered him in this way, saying, "So shall it be done to the man who kills him." Eliab his oldest brother heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger burned against David, and he said, "Why have you come down? With whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the evil of your heart, for you have come down that you might see the battle." David said, "What have I now done? Is there not a cause?" He turned away from him toward another, and spoke like that again, and the people answered him again the same way. When the words were heard which David spoke, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine." Superhero moment. Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." David said to Saul, "Your servant was keeping his father's sheep, and when a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after him, struck him, and rescued it out of his mouth. When he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, struck him, and killed him. Your servant struck both the lion and the bear." Superhero moment. This uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, since he has defied the armies of the living God. David said, "Yahweh, who delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine." Superhero moment. Saul said to David, "Go. Yahweh will be with you." Saul dressed David with his clothing. He put a helmet of bronze on his head, and he clad him with a coat of mail. David strapped his sword on his clothing and he tried to move, for he had not tested it. David said to Saul, "I can't go with these, for I have not tested them." Then David took them off. Superhero moment. He took his staff in his hand, and chose for himself 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag which he had. His sling was in his hand, and he came near to the Philistine. The Philistine walked and came near to David, and the man who bore the shield went before him. Superhero moment. When the Philistine looked around and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and had a good-looking face. The Philistine said to David, "Am I a dog, that you come to me with sticks?" The Philistine cursed David by his gods. The Philistine said to David, "Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the sky and to the animals of the field." Then David said to the Philistine, "You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of Yahweh of armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today, Yahweh will deliver you into my hand. I will strike you and take your head from off you. I will give the dead bodies of the army of the Philistines today to the birds of the sky and to the wild animals of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that Yahweh doesn't save with sword and spear, for the battle is Yahweh's, and he will give you into our hand." Superhero moment. When the Philistine arose, and walked and came near to meet David, David hurried and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. David put his hand in his bag, took a stone and slung it, and struck the Philistine in his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the earth. Superhero moment. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him, but there was no sword in David's hand. Then David ran, stood over the Philistine, took his sword, drew it out of its sheath, killed him, and cut off his head with it. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they fled. The men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted, and pursued the Philistines as far as Gai and to the gates of Ekron. The wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Shaaraim, even to Gath and to Ekron. Superhero moment. The children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they plundered their camp. David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. When Saul saw David go out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the captain of the army, "Abner, whose son is this youth?" Abner said, "As your soul lives, O king, I can't tell." The king said, "Inquire whose son the young man is." As David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. Saul said to him, "Whose son are you, you young man?" David answered, "I am the son of your servant Jesse the Bethlehemite." Superhero moment. 1 Samuel 1:7 verses 1-13, 1:5-2:3, 2:5 and 5:8. Today's story focused on bravery and trust in God.